My name is Don Harden, and I'm the Director of Services for Older Adults at Catholic Charities, but I'm also the other co-chair, so as the other co-chair of the Maine Council on Aging, I also get to say wow. It kind of reminds me of that line from an Alice Walker poem that says, "This should be our revolution, to love what is abundant as much as what is scarce." There's a tremendous amount of abundance in the room, although it feels a little bit like organized chaos right at the moment. And that abundance seems to be a lot of energy, you can just feel it, and motivation to address this aging issue in the state of Maine, be it an opportunity or a challenge. And to think about the kind of focus and supports we want to have that's worthy of the oldest state in the country, that's worthy of the older adults in our life. While sometimes we can take a pass on whether we know a homeless person or a person with a significant disability, I'm sure everybody in the room has an intimate connection with an older person. And part of the job today is to figure out what, if we're not already engaged with this issue, what our role is, because we all own this issue, we all have a part to play. For funders, it might be incentivizing those bold ideas. For people in state government, it might be those innovative, responsive approaches, or in the legislature. For workplaces, it's those aging-sensitive workplaces. For communities, it's aging-friendly communities. But we all in community, it's just, in some cases, it might be to know your neighbors. I've had to figure out that besides driving to work at Catholic Charities, to figure out how to deliver services, I also need to walk across the street and shovel out my neighbors, because if you're an older couple and it snows like it did a couple of weeks ago, it's very scary and depressing to not be able to see out, to be able to open your door, to get your newspaper, to get your mail, to know whether the emergency responder can get to your house if you need it. So we all have a part to play. But this panel builds on what the good speaker mentioned earlier, which is that community by community approach. And so there are some wonderful, innovative things that are already happening. People aren't waiting to figure out what their role is after today. They've been working on things. And with great humility, they don't even appreciate that these are actually some very amazing responses that don't require a lot of money, but it's people taking action. So this panel really celebrates some of those innovative community solutions. There's lots of things going on across the state, and we'll definitely be featuring those over time on our Maine Council of Aging website. So my job, the enviable job of a panel after a break, is to manage this particular panel, and we have 4 wonderful panel presenters. And we don't have bios on them, which is good because we might have given you the wrong bios anyway. So on my right is Linda Jariz, who's going to be speaking on behalf of the Advisory Committee on Aging in Bowdoinham, formerly worked in state government. We have Tony Levesque, Community Development Director, town of Fort Fairfield, who tells me he's already hit a moose twice. Joe Perkins, Development and Community Services Director at the Washington Hancock Community Action, and he's going to represent the at-home Downeast. Yes. And then Judy Shaw, who's an administrator at the State Office of Securities and has just been a major force on the Maine Council for Elder Abuse Prevention. So 4 very interesting panelists. And they all have 10 minutes. There's a guy down here with number cards, so we're going to keep an eye.
There is?
Yeah. And there will be some time for questions afterwards. So I'm going to turn to my right and have you, Linda, start us out.
Thank you, Don. Is this working okay? Yeah. Okay, I'm very happy to be here, although I have to say our committee was a little surprised to be asked. But I'm very happy to be here representing the Advisory Committee on Aging in Bowdoinham. And I'm going to quickly try to do 4 things. Tell you how we came to be, tell you a little bit about what we're doing, say something about our foundational principles that we've sort of developed along the way, and also say a little bit about where we're trying to head. So I'll do that hopefully within 10 minutes. The work on aging in Bowdoinham began as part of the comprehensive plan effort. And as you know, all towns have to do comprehensive plans. And Bowdoinham was in the middle of redoing its plan. I think it's actually late, but nonetheless, it's in the middle of redoing its plan. And they commissioned a study to be done on the needs of older residents in our town. And the study was produced in August of 2012. And as a result of that work, the Advisory Committee on Aging was appointed by the town, so we're advisory to the town, with the goal of taking a look at the findings and recommendations in that report and figuring out what needed to be done. The report, I just want to say the report had 5 recommendations that we began to work on. Increased communications, and really people wanted to know more about what was going on in town and what was available for folks who are older. They needed an information and referral source. We needed to develop a volunteer base. The whole goal of our work, however, is around helping older adults stay in town for as long as possible. Now, many of you know Bowdoinham's a really small community, 2,800. We don't have medical access in town. You have to go somewhere to get that. We don't have a transportation system to speak of. So we really are trying to figure out how to keep people happy, healthy, and in town for as long as possible. That's our goal. And they wanted a senior center developed, and I'll say a little more about a senior center, but I'll tell you a little bit about the advisory committee. They're not wallflowers. The advisory committee was not going to be a committee that was going to sit around and talk about this. We decided right away that we really needed to do some things. And we kicked it off by opening a senior center 1 day a week. We found donated space from a local church because there's no really community building that would support this work. So we opened that up 1 day a week. And then we started an exercise program 1 day a week, and that, because it was really popular, went to 2 days a week, which is, all of these are still going on, by the way. We began a walking group for folks who could walk, and we accommodate, by the way, in all of these, a variety of abilities. So it's something that we felt was important. We've done special programs such as Matter of Balance, which is a fall prevention program, a nationally recognized fall prevention program, and Tai Chi for Balance, which is, I think, a relatively new program, but we're offering that as well. And then we have bridge lessons for those who are so inclined. We started building that. Bowdoinham had 2 luncheons going on a month that was aimed at older residents. And we started building a speakers program after one of those luncheons. So we've offered speakers on a variety of issues. And I'll say a little bit more about that, but it was been a great way to get some information that people are interested in out to them. We do a monthly activities and resources list. We always have an article in our town newsletter, which is every other month. We have an email list that we're building and continues to grow. And we have the monthly activities and resources available in various places around town, as well as on our website. So our foundational principles, and these are things that we kind of came to over the first year. We really understand that we're part of a larger community, and therefore our work is collaborative and builds on the efforts of others wherever we can do that. We're guided by the report. There are a lot of issues. Once you go down this road, we found there are so many issues that are really hard to address. We try to stick to kind of our report and kind of the things that we can do. And we found it really important to solicit feedback from folks who are participating in programs and that we're in contact with on a regular basis to make sure that this is working for them. I have to say that the advisory committee is not just the planning committee, we're the delivery committee. So if we think it up, we have to do it. And so we try to be respectful of 2 things, that everything that we're doing is occurring on a volunteer basis, and we're not paid staff. So we try not to overwhelm any one member. we've learned a few things about this, but it is all volunteer work. We do pursue grant opportunities when they seem reasonable to do so, but not if they're going to either take us off mission or require way more effort than we can give. And we very much welcome others who want to offer their skills and talents. The other thing that we do is we advocate for seniors when they're participating in other events and activities for the town. So trying to make some of these things a bit easier for folks. So quickly, some lessons learned. Find active community members that want to be part of the committee, because we have to do the work. So you just can't, you have to have people who are willing to do that. We also learned we have to assess interest before we're offering anything, including our speakers, because people walk with their feet when they don't like something. And the senior center that's been an interesting little experience for us, because even though a few people go to the senior center, we know that we have to offer activities and scheduled events in order to really draw people in. So that was one of the things we learned. We also need to communicate, and part of that is listening. But we do try to find multiple ways of getting our message out so folks know what's going on in the community. And we want to do a whole lot more. We have a group of folks that we're really connected with, but we know there are many others in town that we'd like to be connected with, or we'd like to offer them that opportunity. But outreach gets pretty complicated and takes time. And so that's something for us to work on in the future. So where we're headed, now granted, we've only been doing this for a year. We opened a senior center last January, and we've done this in a year. We are now requesting from the town some staffing assistance to help with the coordination that needs to happen in order to make this work. But they've also been informed all along the way about what's been happening. We want to do much more outreach to homebound seniors and to folks who are otherwise not engaged in whatever we're offering at this point, to find out what those needs might be. We have the capability to do home safety assessments, but we don't have a way of really organizing it all at this point. And we do need to do more about exploring transportation needs and solutions. Right now, what we've been doing is when we know of an individual that requires some assistance, we see if we can figure it out. So that's it from Bowdoinham. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, Linda, that you start out by saying you weren't sure why you were invited. There are people in the room who are saying, like, why aren't we doing that in my town? So now we go to the Crown of Maine.
Well, I had a different story to tell you until I got here and saw what the audience was like. I was invited because we just built a housing project. It's not our first housing project. There was a real need in our community. We had to find a way to build a $4.2 million project for 25 housing units and make them affordable, and build a family health clinic on the same campus. And it really starts a long time ago. Tell you a little bit about me. I'm a fifth-generation Fort Fairfieldite, and there's a few others in the room that I think are fourth or fifth generation Fort Fairfieldites as I look around. And even on this panel here, my sister's classmate is sitting here. I wear a lot of hats, and you have to in a little town. When I was born, there were 6,600 people, and we have 3,500 now. We're still providing the same services. We had built a hospital. We had gone through urban renewal, and at the time we went through urban renewal, we did comprehensive planning in the 60s. We did comprehensive planning in the 70s. Did comprehensive planning in the 90s after the floods. We did comprehensive planning in 2006 one more time to find out where our assets were, where our inventory was, what our needs were, what kind of funds we could put towards our facilities, what the wishes of the community was. And then in about 2008, we celebrated our 150th anniversary. And with that, we did a community potluck. We didn't tell them why we invited them, but we had over 300 people show up. most of them are quite elderly. Because if, this is the soapbox I usually use, if the state of Maine is considered the oldest state in the nation, and most of us would know that Aroostook County is the oldest county in the state, and some of you may know that Fort Fairfield is either the first or second oldest community in the county, then Fort Fairfield is probably the first or second oldest community in the nation. So we need to plan for that, and we have been. We built housing units. We established a housing authority in the 50s, and they built public housing for low income. And then in the 70s, after that second one, comprehensive plan, we decided that we needed some senior housing in our Main Street area, so they'd be downtown, and we could take care of them. And there's 36 units there, I think. And then we had a flood, and guess where the housing project is? Downtown. So we converted a school and made 17 units, and we're going to displace 20 units, but we built a dike to protect them. And then our community continued to age and our migration, and just an example of that, when I was in school, there was between 100 and 120 students per class. That's not a large amount considering the schools around here, but when you show the classes today start with 30 kindergarten kids, and not all of them graduate. They're shrinking, and they're moving to southern Maine. I have 40 classmates that live in the greater Portland area. 40 classmates that live in the greater Portland area. They've come, they follow the jobs elsewhere because of the mechanization of the farm, and the large families get smaller, and what was left was a lot of older homes. And our inventory and our analysis back in the 2000s showed us that we had a lot of 100-year-old farmhouses and older couples still living in those farmhouses, because what once was 150 farms, resident farms, there's only 7 resident farmers in Fort Fairfield now. The rest of it is farmed by corporate farmers. So then the hospital decides it's going to close. It closes all its satellite clinics around Aroostook County, and they're going to close ours. And my boss, who's a 6th-generation Fort Fairfieldite, decided that that wasn't going to happen. And we wanted to find a way that we could keep it from closing. And we started talking to the owners of that organization. And we looked at 3 things, either converting it to housing and updating their clinic, tearing it down and building a new clinic and new housing there, or going off-site greenfield. And that's what we did. And through all this planning process, comprehensive planning process, and the potluck suppers, we developed committees, and the committees built a book. And this is the result. It's the Economic Development Investment Strategy for Fort Fairfield. And it's simply branded A Passion for Community, building a community of choice. And in there, we had 10 committees, and one of the committees was housing, and one of them was health, and the focus was on senior housing. And we were fortunate enough that we, with the Housing Authority, they have a subsidiary, and that subsidiary is the Residential Development Corporation, and they can do some nonprofit stuff that the Housing Authority could not do. And that's why we earmarked our funding sources, and we had a brainstorming session with all of the funding sources in the state of Maine that we could think of. Legislators, national delegation, USDA, Economic Development Council of Maine, Department of Economic Community Development, and others. And we found out that there was a project very similar to ours that was happening in Aroostook County, in Holton, Maine, and it was almost complete. And we found out where their funding source was, and that if we were willing to partner with some organizations, that we could probably capture those. And that was Maine State Housing Authority, and those were affordable housing income tax credits. And we applied, and we were denied the first time, but my boss doesn't say take no for an answer. He just wants to know how it can be done and what we need to do better next time. So we reapplied. And that gave us about $3 million towards this project. And then part of the patchwork quilt was some CDBG funds, which our community has a very good success story with. I've administered over 40 programs, and about $9 million for infrastructure and services for our community. So we were successful with that. And here comes the real frosting on the cake. In order to build the clinic, we needed to come up with a match. We didn't have any money. We'd already lost our largest taxpayer and our largest employer. They moved away and didn't want to pay taxes anymore. And so there's a developer's fee attached to those affordable income credits. So the town manager at the time decided that we would be the developer and use that developer's fee to pay for our match. And it meant we had to learn more capacity. We hired a consultant, Coastal Enterprises, who was also the consultant or the developer for the Holton project. And they led us through this whole process. So we built 25 units in the health clinic, and there are 11 fully handicap accessible units out of the 25, and the other 14 are handicap adaptable. Within a 2-day period, I believe they can be handicap accessible. There are 5 2-bedroom units and 20 single-bedroom units, and we have to make sure that they're available for 60% of the median, which for a family, a single person, I think is around $22,000 in Worcester County. And for a couple, it would be $25,000. For a single bedroom, it'd be $500. And for the 2-bedroom, it would be $600. We built them community rooms in there. We have a community center down on Main Street. We have plenty of senior activities in our community. I am 55 years old, and they still think of me as a kid. I am probably the longest tenured community development director that they've ever had. I know that I've had more years of service because most of the other guys never stayed more than 2 or 3 years. And some would say I've had the most success, but when they come to my office, they still look at me as if I'm that little kid coming into their homes. But it's all about hometown pride, and that's what we're about.
So we get to travel from the top of Maine through the Haynesville woods maybe to Washington and Hancock County. And through every town you go through, there are fiercely independent people wanting to live in their community. So,
yes. Thank you. Again, I was just sitting up here thinking, and it's now that the holiday season is over, it turns into award season on television, where it seems like there's a lot of self-congratulatory award programs. And I know for myself, when I'm watching those shows, I get real annoyed when the award's given to one person, and the next thing you know, there's 15 or 20 people climbing up on stage. But honestly, I was sitting here thinking, what a privilege it is to sit here and represent the program At Home Downeast, which I'm just a part of, and there really should be hundreds of people behind me, a number of whom are in this room today, either as partnering organizations, as colleagues of mine, and as steering committee members for our this program. And what At Home Downeast targets, really, is the vast majority of folks 60 and older who are living where they want to live for the rest of their lives. It's that simple. They're not, I've had so many conversations over the years with people who say, I don't want to move to a retirement community. I don't want to move to a warmer climate. I don't want to move nearer to my children. And that usually comes with a roll of the eyes, you know? But you get it, right? I mean, you know, so what we set out to do is try to provide the supports that folks can use to stay in their communities, to stay in their homes. And one of our steering committee members who is here today, in fact, if I can take a minute, can I just point out, I know at least 2 of our steering committee members are here. Mr. Irving Fonts in the front row, and Joan McCracken, author and retired pediatrician Joan McCracken, are in the room. And it's just a testament to, these folks have met for over 4 years, every 2 weeks. The first 2 years were spent in planning what we could reasonably do to accommodate people, and we're coming up on our 2nd year of operation. And believe me, we've tried to convince them that they don't have to meet every 2 weeks, but they have been committed, they have been respectful of each other's opinions. It's been an amazing process to get to where we are. And where we are is a current membership of 70 individuals. I've got my numbers here, hold on. 60% of which are in their 80s and 90s. So we are helping to empower these people to stay at home. And we do this through a combination of guaranteed services and also services that we make available to them as we can. But they know what's guaranteed and they know what we will make available as we can find it. But some of the guaranteed services include rides to their medical appointments within a 50-mile radius. But I'll tell you right now, we've never refused anybody's, we've always found somebody a ride to their medical appointment, even if it was from the Blue Hill Peninsula to Portland. So, you know, we've managed to, we set guidelines, we have core services, but we have been able to provide what people want, and that is thanks to 90 volunteers that we have signed up for this program in just 2 years. So we provide rides to medical appointments. We provide rides to the grocery store, or we go grocery shopping for them. When we were designing the program, we thought that people might want us to go do the shopping for them. It turns out that that's a social, you know, it's a social thing. They like to get to the grocery store, but they need somebody to help them, and they need somebody to take the bags in, and you know, so that's, in fact, I was reviewing December's numbers. You know, we try to report on what we're doing, and there were far more grocery trips in December than there were medical trips, or dental trips, or pharmacy trips. So, you know, sometimes you design these things and you just don't know what's going to evolve. I mean, and that goes back to something that was said earlier today about, you know, you can plan these things to death, if you think about it. I mean, like I said, it took us 2 years to take this leap of faith. And at some point, I just encourage everybody to think about it in their own community, what you can do. Every single community will be different. You know, this model that we have is not a cookie cutter model by any stretch. If there were 100 of these programs or initiatives in the state, there'd be 100 different ones. And I think that's important to keep in mind. No matter what I say or anybody else says that's working for them, we're here as resources, and we are people who kind of took a leap of faith and decided to do it instead of waiting. But there's all kinds of ways you can look at it in your own communities. Back to our core services. So we provide grocery shopping, medical trips, dental, rides to the dentist, rides to the pharmacy, social rides, like if you hairdresser, church, library. A very, very key component of our program is that we have contracted with Eastern Maine Home Care to provide home visits by nurses. More wellness visits. We're not talking like acute care. We're talking like check vitals, check meds. Just have a nice sit down and see how things are going. None of the services that we provide are forced on anybody. They pay a membership fee to be part of this program. It's a sliding scale depending on their income. And we argued, or not argued really, but debated long and hard over whether there should be a fee or not. What should that fee be? And in the end, we came to an easy consensus that, first of all, if someone's paying into for services, they are far less likely to be reluctant to ask for services. And you all know with that independent streak, a lot of people just won't ask for help. But when they have to pay, they're a lot less hesitant to ask for help. And the other thing that we thought or learned was that it holds our feet to the fire, too. If you're accepting payment from people, you can't say, well, we don't have a volunteer. One of us is going to drag our butt out there to do what needs to be done because these people are paid into this. So it seems to work. I was just thinking, one of the lessons learned, so to speak, I guess, is to be, a couple of the lessons. One is to be patient with the process. I'm impatient by nature, but I learned a lot of patience in this process of developing this program with all these wonderful volunteers. You have to be respectful and listen and be reasonable and logical about what you really can accomplish or you can't accomplish. You can't be all things to all people. And of course, there's things that need to be passed off to others. The other thing, again, I'll go back to the no cookie cutter approach. This At Home Downeast program is part of the national Village to Village network, which many of you may or may not have heard about. I encourage you to check it out, Village to Village network. There are at least 100 of these models. Again, none of them are the same, but similar to At Home Downeast, trying to deal with the same issues that are in operation, and at least another 100 that are in development. And you always hear that no two are alike. You really have to look at it from a very local level. Figure out what the geographic sense of your initiative might be. It might be a neighborhood, it might be a town, it might be a number of towns. Ours happens to encompass 9 towns. So my last word is simply, I just encourage people to dive into this and try to figure out what you can do without waiting for outside help. Of course, we have to advocate for policy change and support, but I think there's a lot people can do working together in their communities. And this program started literally at kitchen tables and in living rooms. So, thank you.
And Judy, and I just want to do what Speaker Eves did, which is to warn you that in 10 minutes from now, if you have a question, to be prepared to ask it.
So I am a native of the beautiful and very caring community of Fort Fairfield. I am embarrassed to say that I no longer reside there.
How many years?
It has been a while. My family has, I don't visit as frequently as I should either. My mother, who will soon be 80 years old, just retired. This year, after working for the same small town law firm for 62 years. Every time I switched to another job after 10 years or so, she said, "Can you never work for the same place? What is your problem?" My heart will always be in Fort Fairfield, though, and I was blessed to go to school with Tony's sister. Every time I go someplace and talk and say I'm the administrator for the Maine Office of Securities, people look at me like, what are you talking about? Not many people know about the Maine Office of Securities. I say that we are the state equivalent of the Securities and Exchange Commission, except we have the ability to be somewhat more efficient. And that will find its way to my friends at the SEC, and they'll be calling me soon. We do a lot of investigations. We regulate stockbrokers, financial planners, all of that wonderful, wonderful stuff. But one of the most important roles we play is to raise awareness and educate elder investors about the red flags for scams, how to avoid financial exploitation. If you have an opportunity to just jump on our website sometime, you'll see some pretty astonishing cases that we've handled, either criminal cases or cases we've handled administratively. Scam artists know who the vulnerable populations are, and they know perfectly well that it's our older population that is, in fact, the most vulnerable. I'm also here today, though, as co-chair of the Maine Council for Elder Abuse Prevention, and I'm honored to serve in that capacity. The Maine Council for Elder Abuse Prevention actually came out of a summit not unlike this one that was focused on elder abuse, including financial exploitation. It's a public-private collaboration open to all comers. I think at this point we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 members. everything from government agencies to nonprofit service organizations to the AAAs to legal services for the elderly, our banks, our credit unions, Fairpoint Communications, you name it. Anybody who identifies that there is an issue with elder abuse and is interested in trying to work on that issue is part of the council. The council focuses its energies on identifying best practices and finding ways to help implement best practices within communities, to raise awareness about elder abuse issues, and to develop programs that, again, can be implemented in the communities. I often say to people, we can pass all the laws in the world, we can enact rules and regulations and come up with ideas, but if we don't bring those out to the communities and help educate people about the issues and implement those programs in the communities, then we are not going to succeed. I am here feeling a little awkward because what I'm here to talk to you about is a program that was envisioned at the statewide level, and there are all these wonderful community programs, but I'm here to tell you that what we've envisioned is going to be implemented at the community level. One of the first problems identified by the council was brought to our attention by our banks and credit unions, and the problem goes like this. We have folks working the front lines. The folks on the front lines, and I can tell you from my mother, who gets all of her advice from Effie at the credit union, and relies very heavily on her. Our older citizens go to their neighborhood banks and credit unions. It is not any, it should not surprise any of you to know that if a scam artist or somebody who's exploiting an elder really wants to be able to do it effectively, they will drive that older person to a branch of their bank or credit union that is not in their home community. And so we're very dependent upon our community banks and credit unions. They identified for us that tellers were seeing red flags of elder abuse and financial exploitation. They've been trained to notify Adult Protective Services, which they were doing, but not everybody is dependent and incapacitated. Adult Protective Services has a narrow area of jurisdiction. So the question became, what do we do? What do we do when we see this with people who maybe have mild cognitive impairment, or maybe they don't have anything at all, they're just vulnerable, and they're being exploited? So the banks, the credit unions, my office, the Bureau of Financial Institutions, Adult Protective Services, Legal Services for the Elderly, we have been working for the past couple of years on a program that we believe to be the first in the nation. It has three parts. One part was the development, and we'll be rolling it out next month. We haven't rolled it out yet. One part is a brochure for senior customers, older customers, to educate them about the red flags so that they can be prepared to try to avoid possible scams that may come to them either through the mail. We know that most elder financial exploitation is actually perpetrated by family members and caregivers. How can they protect themselves? Our program's called Senior Safe, so there will be a Senior Safe brochure. The other two components are training for frontline staff as well as managers and supervisors within the financial institutions. Again, training that will provide them with information on how to identify red flags. Do you have an older customer who used to come into your branch and now they're coming through the drive-through, and guess what? They're not even the person who's driving the vehicle. Do you have somebody who normally would come in and made sure that she is perfectly dressed and her hair is just so, and now she's no longer? She's looking a bit disheveled. What we are training the frontline staff is identify it and report it. Report it to your supervisors and managers. So we also are going to be training supervisors and managers on what do you do when it's reported. This is the exciting part. We are giving them resources that had not been identified previously, that they and resources that really had not come together. So certainly if there's a report to a supervisor and there appears to be some sort of immediate danger, they're going to call 911. But in addition, If there appears to be dependency or incapacity, they contact APS. They can also contact law enforcement. But the Maine Office of Securities has agreed to be the intake agency for state government for reports of possible elder abuse financial exploitation, so that we can take in that information when we're dealing with someone who is not dependent and incapacitated. We can analyze it. We have 4 investigators in our office. If it does not belong in our office, because it's not securities related, we will refer that case to the appropriate federal or state agency, and we will collaborate with them. The other part is resources. Legal services for the elderly, the area agencies on aging have all agreed that if a bank or credit union identifies an older customer who indicates, I'm having trouble paying for my heat, I have issues with my housing, that the banks and credit unions can then say, allow us to help refer you to the appropriate resources. They can, perhaps if they know that the customer may be having trouble with their finances and the customer is going to be coming back in on Thursday because he or she always comes back in on Thursday, they can call an area agency on aging and ask if someone could be in the bank or credit union on that day, so that they can say, look, we happen to have somebody here who might be able to help you out, give you an idea about resources. Similarly with legal services for the elderly, maybe they've got some hint that someone, maybe they already have a power of attorney that they're feeling uncomfortable about, and they could use some advice on how to withdraw that power of attorney. The financial institution can help connect that customer up to legal services for the elderly. We will continue to develop these relationships. My office will work with Adult Protective Services to develop a memorandum of understanding. We'll meet on a regular basis so that we can talk about all of the referrals and come up with the best approach to dealing with those referrals, because we no longer want our eyes and ears in the community, our banks and credit unions, to feel frustrated because they're making referrals and feel like nothing is being done. We all need to come together and be a giant safety net for our most treasured asset. Thank you.
Thank you, panel, and for responding to the 10-minute limit so well. So we have roughly maybe 7 minutes for questions. Proceed to the mic. I see somebody over here. Go into the mic.
Good morning. I'm not here to seek publicity. I'm one of 6 million lawyers from Portland. And 10 years ago, I couldn't have told you where the probate court is, and I ended up trying a will contest, and then I ended up trying a second one, which is, the statistical odds of a lawyer doing that are unbelievable. And all of a sudden I find I'm doing just an incredible amount of elder exploitation law. And I wanted to underscore the point that was made about it. People use the word epidemic. I don't really know what that means, but there's an awful lot of it. And I think it's largely because we are experiencing the largest transfer of wealth ever between generations. People live much longer, and they are living alone. And the exposure for predatory practices is really, really amazing. And a lot of what we're talking about here reduces the isolation of the elderly and makes the predatory behavior much less likely to happen. But there is a lot of it, and my experience is consistent with yours. It's largely family, and it's caretakers. That said, I feel like I'm at an AA meeting here to sort of vouch for the experience. I do have 3 concrete suggestions, and I was hoping to stay for the session at 1, but my office has said get your butt back to work. So, and the 3 suggestions are, 1, these joint accounts at the banks are really a problem. Everybody signs up that says, look, I'm going to take care of your checks, we're going to be co-signatories, and no one tells the owner of the money, yeah, and when you die, that person gets the money. It doesn't need to be that way. The historic joint, I don't want to get super legal, but this historic joint tenancy concept needs to be ditched. That we don't have to have the joint account set up that way. The improvident transfer statute ought to have attorney's fees provisions. You know, if there's been improvident transfers, there should be some carrots to help get the bar involved, helping to protect the elderly. And the third is going to be heresy to almost everyone in this room. The standard for testamentary capacity and for what it takes to have the mental state of mind to do a will needs to be revisited. Elderly redoing their wills at age 85 and 90 is, in my judgment, they are inherently suspect. And there's a bar out there that thinks you should do it anytime they come in. They rewrite the will every year, they bill them. And my experience with the elderly at that point is the last person who talks to them is the winner. And there's a vulnerability there that is frightening, it's terrifying, it's really unfortunate. And we have an archaic legal system that is allowing or enhancing the ability for these predatory practices to occur. And so I would strongly encourage that those sorts of things that make the predatory practices easier be revisited. Thank you for all your work, and I apologize for time.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Great. So I have a question in it to those of you who are working in the communities in terms of the role of technology. I sort of had this hallucination as Joe was talking about that Google car with a friendly, chatty robot driving people around. But at a lesser level, what are you using or what are you exploring and thinking about? Thank you.
For us, thanks. We are exploring technology, and I don't know if Dr. Chip Teal is here today, but he's in the Damariscotta area. He has a program, Full Circle America, that is much more, he'd be a much better resource on the technology that's available. One of the challenges we have, frankly, is even by Maine standards, the Blue Hill Peninsula is rural. I mean, it's hundreds of square miles, and there's really only 14,000 year-round residents. And so a lot of people are they're just not tech savvy, and they're not, all of them are not connected, frankly, or don't even have their broadband and whatnot is not even in their neighborhoods or their homes yet, and frankly, it's one of those things that's on our list to explore the technology, but it's not the focus of where we are at this time. But there are tremendous tremendous possibilities, obviously.
I just want to give Linda the opportunity to respond also.
We do a couple of things around technology. We have some of the same issues in Bowdoinham, believe it or not. We have parts of the town that are connected and parts that are not. But technology is expensive. It's really expensive. So even for people who might have the capability, it's expensive, and they may not be able to afford it. And secondly, we do provide support for folks to try to help them understand the technology they do have, and how to use that in a better sort of way. But that, we're really talking about communication and sort of access to the world, not to technology as a support at home. In the same way.
In our town, we have 72 square miles, and we've attempted to make it town-wide broadband. We have wired systems into our local library, which is very well used, and I think we have 11 laptops now and several other computers, and they do ongoing training for seniors. And the head of our IT in Aroostook County, a man that does most of the computer sales and repairs, is also the chairman of our Residential Development Housing Committee, which is the oversight for our senior housing. So the trunk line goes by the front door of our new housing project, and all 25 units are hooked up for at least 3 ways.
Quickly?
Yes, very quickly. I just want to give you the flip side to plant a seed. Technology, from our perspective, can be very dangerous. And so to the extent we encourage the use of technology, I would encourage education. We had an older woman call our office one day and ask if we could please come take her husband's computer away, because he sits on the computer. His hobby is to sit there and get scammed, and he had lost $30,000 of their life savings. So I would just encourage, I'm not saying no technology, but please be aware that we need to really beef up education on the scam side if we do that.
Last question.
I'll make a comment rather than to
Oh,
go
good.
for the panel.
Thank you. Bless you.
But it piggybacks on Dr. Renfrew's question, and that is related to communications. And I wonder, just for all of us in the room, to whether we are paying attention to literacy and to plain English, because whether or not it's zoning and changing zoning laws, or whether it's health literacy and understanding how to use the health system or the financial system, it also is dependent on who can understand what it is that we're trying to say. And I'm conscious of the fact that we need both plain English, we need culturally competent communications. It's going to be wonderful if all the people with college degrees and computers can access all the aging-friendly community resources. But how do we make sure that we reach everyone?
We're going to leave it there. Sorry. If you can make it in 1 minute or less.
1 minute. At Home Downeast does use technology for the volunteers. And we have a website called Volunteer Matters. And all the volunteers can go to this website, look at the calendar, see who needs a ride where, pick your time, sign up for it. So for that technology has saved a lot of phone calls, and I highly recommend it.
Thank you. So thank you, panel members. Thank you for your attention. All I need to do